Greetings, everyone. From HBS Hong Kong's technology program, it has been our goal to understand upcoming technology trends that influence society and policies. Today, we are very glad to have Dev Lewis to share his visions with us. Dev is the program lead and fellow of Digital Asia Hub, an independent and non-profit think tank based in China and Southeast Asia. The Hub provides interdisciplinary research on internet and digital policies and society in Asia. So Dev's research interest lies in AI policy and digital economy in Asia, particularly on China and India. He also writes a newsletter called China-India Network. My first question is, if we divide Asia into three regions, South Asia, Northeast Asia, and Southeast Asia, so in each region, what are the most acute challenges posed by digital advances to its civilians in the year 2020s?
Yeah, firstly, thank you so much for having me, Lucia. I think if you were to look specifically at, let's just start with Southeast Asia and South Asia, one of the big challenges is disinformation and fake news. We've seen in the last couple of years the growth in social media companies and the growth in using social media to get information. And now this is become one of the growing issues across the region. If you look at Myanmar, you look at India, you look in countries in the other parts of Southeast Asia, you have a range of actors, from state actors, private actors, and other groups with various motives. And right now, given the difficulty for platforms to be able to surveil this kind of content, given the lack of rules and regulations that can really control this kind of spread, and frankly, it's a very difficult beast to tame. You have the question of freedom of expression and freedom of speech, and on the other hand, you have genuine concerns of manipulated media, of disinformation and misinformation. So that's one of the big issues in the region that there are very few policy answers to at the moment. Another big concern is the digital divide. This is something that's probably come to fore in the last 12 to 18 months since the pandemic started. Governments across the region have turned to digital tools as some sort of panacea for containing COVID. And while the use of new tools and technologies is welcome and encouraged, naturally it leaves out large groups of people who, for whether it's socioeconomic reasons or others who don't have access to the internet or to smartphones and tend to be left out. And we've seen this, whether it's, with contact tracing apps, for instance, in Singapore or in India, where, you have many large groups of people who don't have access to the smartphone apps. And then likewise, you have people left out of these systems, and that's a big concern. And then finally, I'll say is privacy and data protection. There's generally across the region a lack of checks and balances, a lack of regulations to protect people's privacy, to set basic standards and protocol for management of data. And while this remains in place, or while the lack of regulations, companies and governments will continue to exploit the situation. I would say these three are the main concerns for me.
Thank you, Dev. My second question is, during COVID-19, we see that it is a scenario where many states and civilian organizations are trying to renegotiate a trade-off balance between surveillance and data protection. So in your opinion, how do you comment the current situation of Asia? And how does Asia differ from other continents in this regard?
I think even here, it's difficult to generalize all of Asia. I think different countries have their own context. But broadly speaking, I think COVID has brought to fore two major issues. One is that the companies and governments are using digital tools to collect even more data than they did before. Today in travel, contact tracing apps using GPS data and Bluetooth is being used by several governments in the region, including India, including Thailand. While of course Singapore has their own contact tracing app, it has focused on privacy much more. You can generally see that there's a trend towards collecting as much of data as possible. And I think this sits on the last 4 or 5 years where this region has seen a huge growth in smartphone usage. There's sort of an undercurrent of tech optimism that technology is changing the region for the better, providing more opportunities, providing more e-commerce, changing the landscape, financial technologies changing people's access to banking and to payments. And so you have this sort of positive undercurrent towards technology. And I think now with the pandemic, we've maybe seen the darker side to it. We've seen people being more aware of their health data and their personal data that's being collected, question marks as to where it's going to be stored, how it's going to be processed. And so I think in generally, you've almost seen an acceleration where you have a growth in this kind of data collection, invasive data collection or biosurveillance. But then you're meeting that with people who are more aware of these risks. And while there's little that we can do about it at this moment, in the middle of a pandemic, often you have to make you don't really have many choices, and you have to go with the program. But I think we might see now a bigger clash or pushback towards these kind of practices. Now, it's hard to say across the entire region, but maybe some countries will lead that front more than others.
Oh, thank you. So you shared with us a vision where we see both new hope and a darker side and concerns that we have. So when it comes to Asia, so we find that many Western policymakers and media are paying a lot of attention now towards China. But we know that Asia is a very heterogeneous and large region. So in your opinion, do you think there are other countries and Asian regions that Western stakeholders should also pay more attention to?
Yeah, I think it's natural. China attracts a lot of attention for its size of its economy and digital and sort of innovation, and also for the kind of government control, censorship, and surveillance practices, both of which can be of unprecedented nature. So I think looking across Asia, there's on the side of innovation, I think Southeast Asia and India, these two areas definitely are leading the way as far as bringing in new business models in fintech, in e-learning, in India, for instance, the use of certain kinds of public civic technologies like UPI, a payment index, or other kinds of sort of open source technologies, I think are quite interesting and definitely worth interest from Europe. And equally on the question of government controls and surveillance, India today is leading the world for internet shutdowns, where many regions of the country, Kashmir most notably, where 4G and mobile data was disconnected for over 12 months, and these kinds of very troubling trends can very easily start to spread and become a practice in more parts of the world, and we're already seeing many countries in around the world, in Africa as well, sort of adopt these practices. And then likewise, you're seeing more pressure on platform companies, Twitter most recently, for paying more attention to the kind of content it's hosting, the question of moderation and responsibility. How do platforms act as a moderator of the content? Are they neutral? Are they not? I think these kinds of questions are being asked, and and this is also happening in Europe as well. We've seen in Germany, we've seen in the EU in general, question marks around platforms and their questions in their role in the ecosystem. So I think there's a I think for as far as learning from policy, I think there's India is definitely a hotspot these days for both the positive and negative effects of technology.
My next question is about technology standards. How would you comment the current role of Asia on tech standards in relation to the other parts of the world? And regarding, civil societies and states in Asia, do you think there should be some common goals that we should work towards the upcoming years on technology standards?
Yeah, it's an important question, and I'll confess I don't have a lot of insight into the world of standards, which can be its own very technical and very context specific policy area. What I will say is that broadly speaking, we're in a moment right now where, for the first time in over 100 years, countries in Asia are at the table, or they are taking a larger share of the global economy, and they want to have a greater say in global decision making. I think this is natural, and so whether it's China, whether it's India, whether it's Japan, South Korea, it's natural that Asian countries will want to have a greater say, not just out of their own economic interest, but also because these contexts can help inform a more open, more accessible, more inclusive standards that can be helpful. For instance, in 5G, we've seen India, for instance, push for specific standards that would make setting up base stations cheaper and more easy and affordable in more rural contexts that more reflect India's reality. And these kinds of examples then can be, these kinds of use cases can help make 5G more accessible around the world. And so I think the game of standards, it's natural that Asian countries will demand more influence, will take up more influence, and in the coming years to come, as more leading technology companies emerge from this region, standard setting will also have more influence from this part of the world.
So here is our last question to you. And let me put it in a more interesting way. If we give you a crystal ball and you peer into it, and can you tell us about the future of Asia technology trends in the upcoming 5 to 10 years? Can you name 3 of the most important trends that Asian and European policymakers should pay more attention to?
The $1 billion question. I think for me, things that I see are important to look out for. One of the things that I like is the rise of the creator economy, which is, I think, going to the next phase of the internet, where rather than be passive consumers of watching videos on YouTube or TikTok, people are more emboldened to create themselves. And I think we're seeing new applications, and TikTok is a great example of both, where not only is it consumption, but also providing tools for people themselves to create content, to find a following, and to even make money and revenue from this kind of lifestyle. And I think across the board, the rise of the creator economy can be very exciting. It can empower people, across the world, really, to be more participatory, to contribute more, and also to it can be financially beneficial as well. So I think that's a trend we'll see more and more as more people get access. I think another one is the essentially more awareness of data and privacy, and it's something that I think will influence new products and platforms in the coming years. It may not happen immediately, but I think as the region grows more sensitive towards the use of data, we'll see sort of new or better adapted products and platforms, to suit these needs. And then I think in the financial space, and this is already we're seeing this today. Today payments is the game, right? That you're seeing a transition to just using mobile payments. But then this will then drive further innovation, where you're then creating more sophisticated financial offerings built on this kind of payment data. You can see this in sort of more advanced credit scoring. We can see this in then new tools and ecosystems, where people who essentially had no banking history, or people who have no a large past where traditionally you needed traditional banks to sort of support you. You now have this whole new ecosystem where maybe your fans and followers on TikTok, actually are economically valuable, and inform your own net worth, so to speak. I think you'll see, essentially the more kinds of data and the more kind of interactions that you have online, have that quantified in better ways. We're seeing this happen also in the rise of tokenization and blockchain, where you can, and NFTs, where, you can essentially own digital assets in more tangible ways. You can sell these assets in more tangible ways. And I think this sort of convergence with the creator economy, I think, will be quite exciting and interesting to see over the next 5 to 10 year horizon.
Wow, that is an inspiring vision, where you show us a world in the future where data, money, and social capital would be intermingling to form new structures and platforms. Thank you for sharing with us, and I hope our audience enjoy this video. Thank you.